Prime Minister Narendra Modi and leaders of the United States, Japan and Australia were in Tokyo today for the second in-person meeting of the Quad leaders. They exchanged views about what's happening in the Indo-Pacific region, global issues of mutual interest. But while the group is being seen to try and contain China, the Quad joint statement stayed away from taking on either China or, importantly, even Russia in the context of the Ukraine invasion. So what does this meeting mean, and what will India's role really be in Quad? And importantly, can this new grouping contain Chinese expansionism? That's our top focus today. But first, take a look at this story from my colleague Paulomi Saha, who is in Tokyo.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, US President Joe Biden, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese put up a united front against any kind of expansionism in the second in-person meeting of the Quad leadership. US President Joe Biden pitched the alliance as one of the democracies against autocracies while praising Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
And Prime Minister Modi, it's wonderful to see you again in person. Thank you for your continuing commitment to making sure democracies deliver, because that's what this is about, democracies versus autocracies, and we have to make sure we deliver.
Later, at the bilateral with Prime Minister Modi, Biden again raised the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
We also discussed the ongoing effects of Russia's brutal and unjustified invasion of Ukraine and the effect it has on the entire global world order. And the U.S. and India are going to continue consulting closely on how to mitigate these negative effects.
India, which is pursuing its own independent policy towards Russia, negotiated the minefield deftly, sticking to its real objective of safeguarding interests in the Indo-Pacific region.
हम दोनों ही देश के इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र के बारे में भी समान नजरिया रखते हैं और न सिर्फ द्विपक्षीय स्तर पर बल्कि अन्य लाइक माइंडेड देशों के साथ अपने साझा मूल्यों और साझा हितों को सुरक्षित रखने के लिए काम कर रहे हैं.
The Quad joint statement reflected India's stand and avoiding naming Russia. It called for peaceful settlement of disputes without resorting to threat or use of force. The four nations reaffirmed their resolve to uphold the international rules-based order. The countries discussed their response to Ukraine war and its implications for the Indo-Pacific. The statement also denounced cross-border terrorism. The Quad meeting was overshadowed by a comment by President Biden, who on the eve of the talks seemed to commit to a military defense of Taiwan should the Chinese attack them.
That's a commitment we made. We are not, look, here's the situation. We agree with a one China policy. We signed on to it and all the attendant agreements made from there. But the idea that it can be taken by force, just taken by force, is just not appropriate. It will dislocate the entire region and be another action similar to what happened in Ukraine.
The Quad stresses that it is a strategic alliance and not a military tie-up, but China still fears that this could be a NATO-like grouping, but specifically for the Indo-Pacific region. Even while talks were on in Tokyo, Chinese and Russian fighter jets were flying close to Japan. So while the Quad may not have announced any sort of specific measures, it appears the message sure has hit home. Paulomi Saha in Tokyo, India Today.
And Paulomi Saha joins me from Tokyo. I know it's late in the night, Paulomi. You've had a very long day, so I won't keep it very long. But what have been the atmospherics like at the meeting? We've heard their official statements, but behind the closed doors, have they specifically mentioned their concerns over both Russia and China behind closed doors? What are your sources telling you?
That's right, Rajdeep. They have, in fact, discussed both Russia and the conflict in Ukraine, as well as China and its growing belligerence in the Indo-Pacific region in detail during that meeting. Remember, yesterday itself, of course, they launched the US-led initiative, which is the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, already trying to counter China and its economic presence in the Indo-Pacific region. India is already on board with it. Of course, the contours of the IPEF are yet to be known, but it is something that the officials and the bureaucrats are already pushing their pens over. But as far as the Quad Summit is concerned, again, the statement, of course, may not have mentioned either Russia or China, but it clearly expressed the sentiment on Russia. Of course, there seems to be some sort of a softening, if you may, in terms of the stance, because while the US categorically maintains, and it was in fact enunciated by the US President Joe Biden in his opening remarks as well, that Russia is the aggressor and Russia needs to be countered, and military aggression doesn't seem to be its only goal. It wants to obliterate Ukraine and its culture altogether. In the statement, of course, it read more like the way India has been balancing the act in terms of saying that we do not we do not support any sort of hostility or violence, and we do believe that dialogue and discussion is the only way forward. We do believe that the international order needs to be maintained, and that is by following international laws, including the UN Charter on China. Of course, again, without naming China, they did mention its growing maritime bullying activities in terms of trying to use coercive activities to try and counter other nations in the Indo-Pacific region. So clearly a very strong statement and a message that went out to China.
Okay. Follow me, Saha. You stay well. Late night there in Tokyo. Appreciate your joining us with all those details.